I'm not so sure I agree with what went down because I'm going to talk to you about it now.
Yeah, but he's not playing football.
You are saying.
He's here for. I'd like to call to order the August 25th meeting of the Shelby Township Planning Commission. Mrs. Casale, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Commissioner Dallo?
Here.
Commissioner DeSico is not here. Commissioner Bernardi?
Here.
Commissioner Wesmonski?
Here.
Commissioner Rapone? Not here. Commissioner Vire?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Let me first begin by welcoming Julie Missick back to the Planning Department. We look forward to her working with us. No more than probably Glenn is looking forward to having somebody to help him back again. Next, first item is approval of the agenda. If there are no corrections, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item is approval of the minutes from the August 11th, 2014 meeting, regular meeting. If there are no corrections to the minutes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Badelu, support by Bernardi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, this evening we've got 4 site plan, 2 public hearings, and an item that the planning director will bring to us as a conceptual design plan that's been submitted. First item, number 14-08, Tony LaChurco, Olympia Homes, Ansbury East Multiple Family Development. If the petitioner is here or representative. If I get your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Pete Snyder from Urban Land Consultants, representing the applicant, Mr. Tony LaChurco. The project in front of you tonight is located on the north side of Ansbury Drive, east of Van Dyke. It's on just approximately 10.5 acres. It's zoned R12. We're proposing to develop it with 8 each 10-unit buildings for a total of 80 units, I think, under the zoning. Up to 108 would be allowed under the R12. There are some wetlands and floodplain issues with the site, which are shown on the site plan to the north. We've already sought and received the required MDEQ permit for it because it affected the site plan enough that we want to make sure we had it in the bag before we brought the project to you. Also, there's a considerable history on this piece of property with Mr. LaChurco. This is a continuation of Ansbury Place, which is to the east across the Disco Drain. It also had a site plan on it that was proposed back in 2007, 2008 for a totally different style building than Ansbury Place with significantly more units. I think there were 98 units proposed on that site plan. So with that, I've received the planner's comments. There's one point on there that I'll bring to your attention. Ansbury Drive is a 70-foot wide right-of-way, which is kind of an unusual right-of-way for a local street. The ordinance is pretty clear about what the setback is for public streets that are local. It should be 90 feet, but your planner has pointed out that sort of the generic setback, if it were a private street, would be another 5 feet for 95. The prior site plan for Ansbury was approved with a 90-foot right-of-way or 90-foot building setback on Ansbury, as was the prior site plan on this particular property. So we're just continuing with the history on this property. So with that, I'm certainly available for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nguyen, your comments?
Mr. Chairman, echoing what Mr. Snyder said about the setback, I have no problem accepting the 90-foot setback. I just wanted to point out there's a little bit of a technical anomaly here. I don't think it would require Zoning Board of Appeals approval if you accept it. We do want a copy of the MDEQ permit just for the file. There's a couple comments from the fire department in terms of making sure the hydrants are at the maximum 500 feet apart and street names have to be approved by the fire department. Otherwise, this is a very complete submission, and I think it's ready for an approval.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, how does this fit into the development that's going into the planned development that's going into the east of this property?
Actually, it'll be a freestanding. This won't fit in with that and connect at all.
Nothing?
No connection whatsoever.
Okay. Then with that, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready for a motion.
I think Mr. Dallo had up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nguyen, do we require any recreation area in project with so many apartments, swimming pool, or tennis court, anything required?
They're required to set aside a certain amount of open space based on the number of units, and they've done that. It's up to really the applicant's discretion if he thinks a clubhouse or some other facilities are needed, but they've met the requirements for the open space.
Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Byer?
I'll bring a motion if you like.
Yep, please.
I move to approve the site plan for Tony LaChurco for Ansbury Place East Apartment Site Plan number 14-08, subject to the submission of a revised plan addressing all department comments.
Support, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, moved by Byer, support by Dallo. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Byer?
Yes.
Commissioner Dallo?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Commissioner Waxmansky?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Good luck. Okay, next item, 14-24, Premier Athletic Real Estate Investments, LLC, Brett Baker.
Good evening. Brett Baker with Premier Athletic Investment, Real Estate Investments.
Get an address too, please. Can I get an address?
Address, 13,000 Evergreen in Romeo. What we're proposing to do is put up a indoor soccer facility with associated office and retail area on 23 Mile Road.
Do you have any plans or anything
I
you can share?
Did not bring the plan.
Okay. Mr. Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the building that's right next to the Kroger site. It abuts Devonshire Drive, which is the main road leading up to Kroger, and the other side is the Fogg Industrial Court. So the opposite of Fogg Industrial Court is a new restaurant that's being built, so they're right in between there. It's zoned industrial. We do allow this type of training facility in an industrial district. Couple of comments. Minor discrepancy in the height of the building. It's 2.5 feet taller than we allow. If they're able to reduce it slightly, then they wouldn't have to take a trip to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Otherwise, they'd have to seek relief through the Board of Appeals. The ordinance doesn't contain a specific standard for parking for this type of building. There's some generic requirements for indoor recreation, but not specifically this type of use. And the applicants provided, I think, a very thorough summary of what they feel their parking needs are based on that use. The ordinance gives you a little flexibility in accepting different standards if there's some documentation. I think their standards are sufficient to enable you to approve their parking. They have a combination of metal siding and block and brick on the front of the building. The use of metal siding requires your approval. Typically, buildings of this size, we've accepted metal siding when there's a lower course of brick or stone material. There's going to be some modest adjustments to the lighting plan to make sure the illumination at the property line is not more than a 1-foot candle. We need to know the maximum height of the parking lot lights. In terms of department comments, there's a 250-foot requirement for the fire hydrant with no obstructions, and they'll have to adjust something to, or maybe move the fire hydrants to meet that. 2 parcels must be split and combined prior to the development. There's a sidewalk on Devonshire that they suggest, the building department suggests it should be in a width of 5 feet, not 4 feet. And another comment about exterior doors and some concerns about fire suppression and egress requirements. All of those would be typically handled during the building department review. But otherwise, Mr. Chairman, this lines itself up pretty well with the requirements of the ordinance, and I would recommend approval.
Okay. You shared these comments with the petitioner?
Yes, this didn't come in for preliminary review because of the timing. We thought we'd just try to get it to the Planning Commission as soon as we could, and I know Mr. Baker and his engineer do really quality work, so I thought we can move them forward. So this isn't a situation where they didn't have the benefit of that preliminary review, and these are really minor comments, actually.
You have no issues with anything?
I have no issues with it. We'll drop the building down to the required height. Unless we want to go higher, then we'd have to come back to ZBA. But for now, we'll drop it down to the required height, the maximum height.
Okay, good. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, one question to Mr. One. How are we handling the zoning being indoor soccer and a retail in the front of that?
A number of years ago, we've had so many requests for indoor recreation facilities and industrial because the buildings set themselves up better for that we actually amended the ordinance and we now allow it, including the retail part of it. Similar to the restaurant, it was an industrial. The zoning ordinance is broader in scope now, Mr. Dallow, that those uses are permitted now in industrial.
Thank you, Mr.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Casale.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan for Premier Athletic Real Estate Investments, site plan number 14-24, subject to the submission of a revised plan addressing all department comments.
Support.
Okay, moved by Casale, support by Renardi. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Casale.
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi.
Yes.
Commissioner Dallow.
Yes.
Commissioner Waxmansky.
Yes.
Commissioner Vire.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 14-28, Mode Development, industrial building located on the east side of Shelby Parkway, south of 24 Mile Road. Is the petitioner or representative here?
Good evening. I'm Maria D'Agostini here from Mode Development, 38700 Van Dyke Avenue, Suite 200 in Sterling Heights, Michigan. We're here to present the future home of Transform Automotive. It's a new facility that would be built in the Cherry Creek Industrial Sub off Shelby Parkway. It's approximately 7.939 acres. It's going to sit right between the current facility that's being built and the one that's now being developed on the east-hand side of Shelby Parkway. The project is a total of 150,000 square feet, and it's going to be completed in 2 phases. The first phase is approximately 81,000 square feet, consisting of 4,500 square feet of shop and 4,500 square feet of office and 76,757 square feet of shop. We intend to deliver that June of 2015. The remainder of the space will be delivered 28 months thereafter. We intend to build the entire shell of the building as part of the first phase, and as many site improvements that are feasibly possible we'd like to include with that first phase of construction, with just the second phase being the completion of the interior. That second phase consists of just under 70,000 square feet to get your grand total square footage of 150,115 square feet.
I think I may be a little confused. You're going to do the whole shell in the first phase, or just half the shell?
Yes, the intention is to do the whole shell. There's a party wall or a partition wall where you see that bay 1, 2, 3, 4.
And then within 28 months after the shell, then you'll do the interior of the second half?
Correct. The first portion is going to be completed where it says initial building footprint. That first portion is going to be completed with phase 1. And then 28 June 15th or June 2015, we plan on delivering that first phase, and thereafter we'll complete that second phase, the interior of that second phase.
Okay, but by June of next year, the whole exterior will be done.
Correct.
The footprint of the building will be done.
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions?
Mr. Nguyen?
No questions, just a couple of comments. You might notice that the plan that's in front of you, they flipped the building and reversed it. And after they submitted it, I talked to the applicant, and they said they think it might work better for the loading docks if they flip the building over. So I talked to our engineer. We don't have a problem with it. We'll just review it one more time to make sure it met all the requirements. These industrial buildings are pretty simple to review, particularly when they're done so well and submitted so thoroughly. The only comments we have are just to identify the zoning of the abutting properties, which is a standard comment. The width of the sidewalk along Shelby Parkway should be dimensioned. DPW had a comment about tying into the water mains, and the standard comment about the 250-foot radius for the fire hydrants has to be met. Otherwise, this is a very clean, again, very professional, well-done site plan.
Okay. You don't have any issues with those?
Oh, none at all.
Okay. All right. To the board, any questions for the petitioner?
Ready for a motion?
Sure, Mr. Byer.
I move to approve the site plan for Mode Development Site Plan number 14-28, subject to the submission of a revised plan addressing all department comments. Support.
Been supported. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Byer?
Yes.
Commissioner Dalu?
Yes.
Commissioner Waxmansky?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Good luck.
Thank you.
The next item, request site plan number 14-27, David Hanot, BMW of Rochester Hills, regarding a parking lot expansion and building elevation changes.
Thank you. My name is David Hanut. I'm an architect with CHMP in Grand Blanc, Michigan, 5198 Territorial Road. We're here, myself and Mr. Wayne Youngblood are here representing the applicant, BMW of Rochester Hills. And as you indicated, we're here. The project involves some exterior renovations to the existing dealership and the development of additional display parking on the undeveloped parcel attached to the original parcel, which lies just to the north and fronts on DeQuinder. The current zoning is C4, general business.
Excuse me for 1 second. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
The plan is to also do some renovations on the plaza out front of the existing dealership. Nothing major, actually. It's simply some new concrete topping over the existing position, and new lighting, of course, in the parking display. And I have just one question. The review comments that we received back limited the height, I believe, to 20 feet on the fixtures, and all those current fixtures on the adjacent parcel are 25 foot. And I just wondered if
Mr. Nguyen will address that under his comments. So.
Very good. The storm drainage system ties into an existing underground detention system that was approved back in year 2005, and this area was contemplated at that point and designed into that system. So any questions you have, we'd be happy to respond.
Okay. All right. Mr. Nguyen, your comments?
Sure. Another very complete submission, Mr. Chairman. A couple minor comments. One is to show the easement for the Plumbrook drain. We'd like to see a detail of the parking lot fixture. If they're the same, that's fine. And the ordinance does give you the flexibility to adjust the height to 25 feet if that's consistent, just as long as there's a reference on the site plan that it's matching the existing. The only comment we had on the architectural was I know they're using Dryvit at the lower elevations, and I know Dryvit can be a little less durable than brick, but it's not near the entrance, so that may not be as much of a problem. And maybe after I'm done, maybe Mr. Hanut could comment about, if the Dryvit's more durable than it used to be. comment from the fire department about even though they're not expanding the building, the fire hydrant coverage is not exactly what they need it to be, so that'll something they'll have to verify with the fire marshal. The storm sewer comments from DPW and building notes that the handicap parking doesn't comply with building code requirements. Now, I don't know if that's relevant if it's only for display parking only, so I'll verify that with the building director before we go any further. But otherwise, a pretty straightforward, simple submission, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to comment on the drive-it?
Sure. The addition of the drive-it, the EFIS, exterior insulated finish systems, it's at a new display wall on the front of the building. There's simply foot traffic up there. There's no road traffic, so there won't be any splashing of salts or anything. I don't think that should be an issue or a concern. There's other portions of the building that do have drive-it on it now, and it's held up very well for some 10, 15 years.
I'm satisfied with that explanation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. To the board, any questions, petitioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
the dealership has been very helpful neighbor to our church that attend, and they've been doing excellent work in there, and we appreciated having them neighbors there to our church. Just wanted to make that comment.
They're still not going to give you a deal on a car.
Thank you for your
And I will
comment.
make a motion when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Dallo.
I want to make a motion to approve the site plan, BMW of Rochester Hills in Shelby Township, site plan number 14-28, subject to all submissions of the revised plan addressing all department contents.
Okay, moved by Dallo, support by Bernardi. If there are no questions of the motion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dallo?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Commissioner Vire?
Yes.
Commissioner West-Kowalski?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, next item we have under public hearings, number 14-25, Simon Morrow. Mrs. Casale, would you read the public hearings, please?
Yes. Notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission for the Charter Township of Shelby, Macomb County, Michigan, has received a request for approval of a single-family condominium project. Applicant Simone Morrow, 48657 Hayes Road, Shelby Township, Michigan, 48315. The proposed use, 6 detached single-family condominium lots. The location, south side of 25 Mile Road between Van Dyke and Mound Road, site plan number 14-25. Sidwell number 23-07-09-200-016. The legal description, the Planning Commission will meet on Monday, August 25th, 2014 at 7 p.m. in the Shelby Municipal Building, 52700 Van Dyke, Shelby Township, Michigan, for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the site condominium application. The application for the site condominiums may be examined at the Planning and Zoning Department in the municipal building Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Written comments may be submitted to the Planning Commission at the above address prior to the hearing. Oral comments will be heard during the public hearing. This notice is provided pursuant to the requirements of the Michigan Public Act 110 of 2006 as amended. Shelby Township Planning Commission, Chairman Jerome Moffitt, Secretary Raquel Moore. 43 property owners were notified on August 6, 2014.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kirk, did the publication meet all legal requirements?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Casale, did we receive any correspondence relating to this request?
We did receive one piece of email correspondence from Ron and Jennifer Schaaf, and they have some concerns which we probably could answer tonight. Concerns on the proposed size of the family condos, what existing trees will be cut, and questions of that nature that hopefully will be answered tonight.
Okay, thank you. The format for the public hearing will be as follows. The petitioner or their representative will give a presentation stating the reasons for the request. Commissioners may then ask questions of the petitioner. The floor will be open to the public, and then finally the petitioner can make concluding remarks. At this point, if the petitioner is here, if I could get your name and address and the reasons for your request.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Simon Morrow with Morrow Engineering, 48657 Hayes Road, Shelby Township, Michigan. The reason for the request, we looked at this parcel. It's approximately 163 feet by 998 feet deep. It's a regularly shaped parcel, and we thought that if we went 90 feet, you could probably go 90 feet and run a road straight north and south and do probably 10 lots possibly out of there. But by the time you do all the development costs, we figured that you could possibly split it into 6 units. Of course, you need a variance, and looking at some of those items that call for variance, because there's a subdivision next door called, I believe it's called Aurora Park, and those are 80-foot lots. And then the subdivision that was approved to the east, which is the Mancini parcel, those are all 80-foot lots. At one point, your zoning of R1B, and they're all zoned R1B. At one point, R1B called for 80-foot lots, and I think that's how most of that area got developed, is 80-foot lots. So we thought, rather than going through a complete subdivision submittal where you put the road in and having 10 lots, it probably have more impact on the trees and the neighbors or whatnot. We felt that this would be the less impact, where you could leave a lot of trees and have larger lots. And that's how we came up with that configuration. And that would be an extension of Sunrise Boulevard, which would be a public road, and it would be designed according to the Macomb County Road Commission standards. And that would be an extension. So right now they don't have that turnaround, which would make it convenient for any emergency vehicles or whatnot to be able to turn and loop through around and go back. And then the 2 lots on 25 Mile Road, of course, are probably the less desirable. But I see some construction activity on the north side of 25 Mile Road, so there is a demand to, be so close to the school or whatnot, and I feel that there's a market for that as well. So we felt that this is a lesser of any of the evils, and this is probably the most likely best way to develop this parcel into 6 units as opposed to any other development. It might require more variances or whatnot. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. And
okay. Mr. Nguyen can go for your comments.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we have a few comments on this application. The first is we should probably at least have a name for development so we have a reference for it in the file. And I think Mr. Morrow offered a good description of how this fits in the other area, but it would also be, I think, useful to see a larger scale map showing the relationship of this to Aurora Park and some of the surrounding development. Comments 3 and 4 relate to the R1B standards. 2 of the lots exceed the depth to width requirement of 4:1 by relatively modest amounts, and all 6 of the sites are short of the minimum width of 90 feet for the R1B lots, and both of those items would have to be addressed by the Zoning Board of Appeals through the variance process before we could grant approval. There is a requirement for a 7-foot sidewalk across the 2 lots that front on 25 Mile Road. A tree permit would obviously be required. That would be approved by the Township Board as a separate application. We'd like to see the loss and drain easement in the R1B district. Side entry garages are required, and a master deed would be required at final review. And finally, building notes that a portion of Lot 6 is in a floodplain, and that should at least be shown on the plan. I don't believe it's extensive enough that it would impact that lot, but it should at least be shown for reference purposes. Mr. Chairman, as we've typically done in cases where there's a need for a variance that's design related, I think it would be better to wait to take any action on this site until they've sought relief through the Board of Zoning Appeals. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Question actually to the planner. The Aurora Park, were those 80-foot lots?
Yes, they were developed, I believe, under the old R1B standard. Okay. And there are several lots, I think there are 2 lots on the north side of this road coming in that received
82 feet.
Yeah, 82 feet. Yeah. So there's a couple that received some variances in the past. So it's not dissimilar.
It looks like the parcel next to that kind of got split, where there were 2 still at 160 and then 2 180s kind of wedged in between.
I think that's similar to what happened. Yeah. And there's a larger parcel on the south side of that Sunrise Court that with the pond in front of it. That's a much bigger parcel.
Okay.
Thank you.
Back to the board. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none. This is the only public hearing the Planning Commission will hold on this subdivision approval request. All remarks will be entered into the record for Township Board evaluation. We are a recommending body, and the Township Board will evaluate our recommendation, which is a legislative body. The Township Board will make the final decision on the subdivision application. At this time, I open the floor for anyone from the public that wishes to ask a question or offer comment. Okay, I need you to come on up.
Sure.
State your name and your address, and then when you're done, sign in, please.
Okay. I'm Jennifer Schaff.
Okay, why don't you wait till you get to the microphone?
Jennifer Schaff. I'm
Okay.
part of the email. 7084 Sunrise Road. We're the larger parcel on whatever side that is, south side, I guess. So our biggest concern is how many trees are you leaving? And the way our house is, if
Okay,
you're
I'm
going to
going
have
to need you to, you can talk
Sorry.
as much as you want,
Yeah.
but just do it into the microphone.
So when you have the
The guys in the
parking,
booth yell at me, and I don't want that. So.
what's it?
The guys in the booth yell at me if you don't talk into
Oh,
the
okay.
microphone.
So the way you have the circle that you're going to have with parking are the headlights going to come into our home? And if there's going to be trees separating, I don't know if you can put the picture back up, but separating like our property line from where the single units are going to be. And then we're not architects, but does that mean like the larger line on the left, is that where your tree line is going to stay there past? Okay. And then are you going to leave trees on that end before our
Just ask the
property?
board the question, then we're going to bring it back up and answer all the
Okay.
questions, okay?
So those were, and then I don't know what else he wrote in there, but he's the one that wrote it, but he couldn't be here, so sends me. Oh, the flooding. So obviously, we just had all of that water. We just had all that rain, which is unusual, but we have a pond in our backyard, and there was quite a bit of water. And we know that there's a drain that's close by, the Larson Drain or something. So we want to make sure that that's not going to affect our flooding in our backyard and in our basement, of course. We've never had flooding before, but I don't know if they're going to change.
As part of this process,
They'll make sure that.
our engineers review that
Right,
and make
because
sure
if
that
they raise
the
it
water.
up too much, we don't know if we're going to get more inflow in the water. He wanted to know what PR building setback line is. I don't even know what that means. He wrote this.
Proposed. That's proposed.
And then, how big are the condos going to be? We wanted to know that. We want to make sure that our value of our property is going to stay similar, right? And then somebody in our sub was concerned about our schools are already full, right? So Mallow's full, Eisenhower's full. So obviously that's a concern for people. But I think that was it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment? Come up.
Hello, Richard Molnar, 54728 Morningside Drive, Shelby Township. I'm the house next to their property. Just some questions for the board to inquire on. The zoning on this property is what, for single use? Does that include condos currently, or is that a modification being proposed here tonight? The other is with the drawing that was up on the board, are there 3 lots to the south and 3 lots to the north? I couldn't tell from the drawing, and someone spoke of a north-south drive. Is that off of 25, or will that be just an extension and a cul-de-sac on Sunrise?
Mr. Chairman, I can answer those questions.
Sure.
The only road, I think Mr. Moore was describing an alternate that they considered. The only road extension will be, is that Sunrise Court will be extended from where it stops now and terminated with a cul-de-sac like it's shown there. That's the only public road access that there will be.
Okay.
And there are 6 lots. 4 of the lots will be accessed off of the cul-de-sac, 2 on the north, 2 on the south. The other 2 lots will have access only to 25 Mile Road.
Okay, 2 off of 25
Right.
then from directly off. Okay.
And then to answer your question about the zoning hasn't changed. R1B is a single-family district. These will be sold as condominium units, but they'll still be detached single-family homes.
Okay, do we know if this is going to be single, like ranch style? It doesn't matter, two-story? What are you
We're going to ask the
put in?
petitioner when he
Okay.
gets back up here.
All right, and as far as the infrastructure, because she mentioned there's a storm drain to the east of that, is that going to have to be enhanced in any way to accommodate this development?
Okay.
Questions? Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to comment or ask a question? Going once, going twice, you sign it in, okay. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Mr. Morrow?
Right, I could help answer some of the questions, and I can give our neighbors business cards so they can call me if they have any additional questions. But the Lawson Drain is a natural feature. We're contemplating leaving that the same. As far as the headlights, I think the only headlights that they would ever see is in the turnaround, and I don't know how many people end up driving on that Sunrise. It's kind of a dead end. I mean, we could probably leave it as a dead end, but I think the fire chief would want some sort of turnaround, or whether it be an emergency vehicle would want to turn around. It only makes sense to turn around. And I think as far as condominiums and the size of the homes, they are single-family homes, but it's condominiumized to get the 6 units. They will probably be more enhanced than what's there in Aurora Park. We could look at their deed restrictions and try to match those deed restrictions. So they're not going to be small homes. They're going to be nice homes, because I think now in Shelby, everybody wants, larger homes and colonials or whatnot. And as far as the wooded and the natural features between the residences, of course, the more woods you leave, the more favorable the lot is. And I think that's all our intent, to make it favorable for people that live there. As far as the school district, I don't think that 6 units is going to impact the school district, but it's always growing anyway. And I think Utica is always looking for new students, hopefully. I don't know. So I hope I've answered most of the questions. And
Okay. Mr. Nguyen, is it fair to say that the township does review the drain, what they're proposing?
Absolutely. It'll be done as part of the engineering review, and what we would do then, if it's postponed, we would go back, and after Mr. Morrow makes some adjustments, we'll let our engineer look at it again to make sure those concerns are addressed. Just as it relates to the school district, we always provide them with copies of the plans, and over the past few months, there's a new person in that role now, and he's taken a very active role in monitoring new development, and we, in fact, I met with him about a week or two ago to go over things. So they're keeping track of that much more diligently.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Moved and supported. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. This evening, we may recommend approval, disapprove this request, or table this to evaluate the information we received this evening. At this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dallin.
I want to make a motion to postpone site plan for Simon Morrow, site plan number 14-25, to provide the applicant with the opportunity to apply for required lot variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Is there support of that motion? Support. Okay, moved by Dallu, support by Bernardi. And just to know that anyone who signed in will receive notice. If this does pass, then we table and it comes back forward, so we will let you know. Okay, if there are questions of the motion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dallu?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Commissioner Vire?
Yes.
Commissioner Waxmansky?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Forward to seeing you again, Mr. Morrow. Okay, next item is a rezoning application number 05-14 and site plan number 14-26, DeSulo Building Company, Village of Grandeur 2.
Good evening. My name is Bill Thompson, representing the Luslo Building Company. This project, Villas of Grandeur 2, is an extension of a project that's been developed.
I'm sorry, this is a public hearing.
Not a reading yet. Okay.
We have to read the public notice.
Sure. A notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission for the Charter Township of Shelby, Macomb County, Michigan, has received a request for approval of the following amendment to the zoning map. The applicant is DeLusso Building Company, 20383 Hall Road, Suite A, Macomb, Michigan, 48042. The rezoning request is light manufacturing to R2, two-family, with conditions. Rezoning petition 05-14. The location is the east side of Shaner Road between 23 Mile Road and 24 Mile Road, 51920 Shaner Road. Sidwell number 23-07-13-300-002. The legal description, the Planning Commission will meet on Monday, August 25th, 2014 at 7 p.m. in the Shelby Municipal Building, 52700 Van Dyke, Shelby Township, Michigan, for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the rezoning application. The application for rezoning, zoning ordinance text, and zoning map may be examined at the Planning and Zoning Department in the municipal building Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5 p.m. Written comments may be submitted to the Planning Commission at the above address prior to the hearing. Oral comments will be heard during the public hearing. This notice is provided pursuant to the requirements of Michigan Public Act 110 of 2006 as amended. Shelby Township Planning Commission Chairman Jerome Moffett, Secretary Recall Moore. 100 property owners and utilities were notified on August 7th, 2014.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kirk, did the publication meet all legal requirements?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Casale, did we receive correspondence on this?
Yes, we did receive one piece of email correspondence from Mallory Burns, and the concerns are that we're building condos and not single-family homes, and to make sure to not add more than 24 homes on the site. And the second concern is with the road, the width of the entrance, and the width of the street, and hopefully we can answer those questions this evening.
Okay, thank you. The format for this public hearing will be as follows. The petitioner or the representative will give a presentation stating the reasons for the rezoning. The commissioners may then ask questions of the petitioner. The floor will be open to the public, and then the petitioner may be allowed to make concluding remarks. Now.
Good evening. My name is still Bill Thompson. I work at Lehner Associates, 1700 Mile Road, Clinton Township. I represent the Luslo Building Company. This project is basically a mirror image of Villas of Grandeur 1, which is immediately across the street. The roadway and utilities were installed with Villas of Grandeur 1 and will service both sites. There's a separate detention basin being developed. And I understand from reading the comments that Mr. Wynn has forwarded to me, there are things we have to work out on the engineering side of things with the water main and with the detention basin. We will work those out during engineering. I apologize because apparently there was a layer or two turned off on the drawing. The zoning didn't show up, but there were some items brought up by Mr. Wynn. Sidewalk along the south side of the road, we hadn't shown any because I don't think there's any on the north side, and I understand there's concern about parking. That's something we can work out. I drove down there today. They're doing construction, and it was impassable. But other than that, we can work that out. Now, as far as multiple versus single family, the houses are going to be mirror images of what's not mirror images, but they're going to be the same footprint, the same style houses being built on the north side of the road. So that's the best example I can give you. I'd be willing to answer any other questions you might have.
Okay. Mr. Wynn, your comments.
Let me start by giving you a little background on this, on the site and the site to the north. The original property, when it's zoned R2 now, the one that's already under development, which is a two-family district. At one time, we had an application for rezoning, two-family, and it was approved with duplexes. That particular applicant then lost the property, was foreclosed on, and Mr. Thompson's client came back and said, I want to do single family instead, no more than 24 units, same as it was approved before. So we went back through the process and granted them approval to do that. So while it looks like, it's a little odd showing this as duplex zoning but they will be single family, and single family is allowed in that zoning district. So it's really, again, a mirror image. And I don't have any problem with the concept of what they're doing, but now that we've seen this existing project, how it's working, I do think there are some concerns like the one that was, I think, very well expressed by the neighbors, that, you know, this isn't a standard single-family sub with a normal 28-foot wide pavement cross-section. You know, people park in the street, you can't get another car past it very comfortably, let alone an emergency vehicle. So I think if we're going to allow this, we need to take a little more creative look at how we handle the off-street parking. I think at some point we need a sidewalk on one side of this. If we don't have it on the north side, then we're going to need one on the south side somewhere. So I think, you know, Mr. Thompson's creative engineer, I think we can work through these things, but I think we'd be remiss in just accepting this without going through some of those details. Again, I think the concept is a good one. I'm supportive of that, but I want to make sure we've got this right before we go any further and learn from, you know, this is a hybrid kind of development, and we need to adjust and reflect and make sure that the development plan works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, conceptually, I don't have an issue other than, but working through the parking. I mean, that's something, the way it stands now, you know, makes this unpassable. So, to the board, any questions, comments? Okay, thank you. This is the only public hearing. Yeah, just a moment. Hang on a second. We're getting to that. Don't worry. This is the only public hearing the Planning Commission will hold on this rezoning request. Your remarks will be entered into the record for Township Board evaluation. The Planning Commission is a recommending body. The Township Board will take into consideration these comments when making the final decision on the rezoning. Anyone in the audience or group spokesman is now welcome to speak in support of the project or against. Now, if you'd like to come up and give your name and address.
My name's Brad Burns, actually Miller's husband, 1375, 759 Grandeur Avenue. I actually live on the street. We're actually very supportive of the project, as it will complete the project. The one big concern, more than anything, not just parking, but as a safety factor, as he mentioned with emergency vehicles. Right now, being construction, you drove by, if two cars are parked on either side, you can barely get through. And our concern is just, you know, houses, people are going to park on the street. The driveways are not big, you know, like a lot of other subs. But other than that, that's just we just want to make sure that's really given the point. The other thing is the entry off of Shaner. Right now, it kind of, there's not a site plan here, but it kind of comes from the north. So when you come up Shaner and turn into the street from the south, you almost turn against the curve. So we'd want to see if that street was wide and that entry be.
So there's an insufficient decel lane there? Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, you make over 100-degree turn into the sub.
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually kind of dangerous, because if someone were to be in the right lane of the subdivision exiting, when I turn in the sub coming home from work, coming from 23 and Shaner, I come all the way to the other side, because you have to turn against the turn.
Okay.
So just something to be considered is
Sure.
to make sure that
And Mr.
at minimum
Miller,
that is
engineer look at
widened.
that? Okay.
If not, and I mean, I think the reasoning is because there's a current home there, so to make it all work, they had to do that. But other than that, that was really it.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment? Going twice, three times? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Waxmansky.
Question, Mr. Wynn. A few meetings ago, we had another site plan where architect recommended parking on one side of the street only. And I asked a question on that one, gave a response, I believe, that was standard 28-foot right away. And in that case, parking was required, or it was in best interest to have parking on one side only. Can you explain the difference, or when we have parking on one side, when we don't? Is that an ordinance, or?
I think that choice. No, it's a valid question. The distinction is, I think the previous one you're referring to, Mr. Wexmansky, was a public road under the jurisdiction of the Road Commission. I think the reference that they made was the county will allow parking on one side if it's a 28-foot wide road. This is only, I think, a 24-foot wide road, and it doesn't have it's not the same cross section, so that's the distinction. This is a narrower, much narrower road.
Okay, so if in the 28-foot they allowed parking on only one side, why would we not allow parking on only one side when it's even more narrow?
I don't think we should allow parking on one side. I think we should. I think they need to come up with a different solution for this.
Completely different.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think on-street parking is a feasible option here at all. Okay. That's a fair question because it's the distinction between public versus private.
So I think the parking where we understand there's an issue. Then the question on the turning radius to get in from the south. Any comment on that?
I see his problem and I can fix it. How's that sound?
Pardon? You see his problem and you will fix it?
It's like that because of the radius encroachment on the adjacent property. They had to twist the approach a little bit to the north so that the new paving didn't encroach on the neighbor's property. As part of this development, we can fix that.
Okay. Okay.
I do believe parking is allowed on both sides of a 28-foot street in a subdivision.
I know we do it in our
It does make it narrow.
Okay. Any other questions of petitioner from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Our decision for this proposed use must be based on the following: the practicality of this rezoning request and the effect on the surrounding area, the owner's right to use his land, do current growth and development patterns warrant this rezoning, and is the proposed rezoning in accordance with the master plan. We may recommend approval, disapprove, or table to evaluate the information we received this evening. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dalu.
I want to make a motion to postpone further consideration to the conditional rezoning application number 05-14 and site plan application number 14-26 for the Villas Grandeur 2 until the revised plan addressing all the department's comments is submitted.
Is there support of that motion?
Support.
Okay, been moved and supported. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dalu.
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Okay, Commissioner Casale.
Yes.
Commissioner Wexmansky.
Yes.
Commissioner Vire.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank
Look
you
forward
very
to
much for
seeing
your
you
time
back.
this evening.
Okay. All right, next, and hopefully final item, Planning Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had an opportunity to meet with a development group interested in redeveloping the southwest corner of 21 Mile and Van Dyke, the old Burger King, no, Big Boy site.
Big Boy, yeah.
And normally this wasn't something I would normally bring to the commission, but I think this site is a unique opportunity, and there's some nuances to the proposed development that I think warrants some preliminary discussion before we go any further. But we could let the gentleman, Mr. Abro, make a brief presentation, then I'll weigh in with some comments.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Abro with Abro Design Group. We're based out of, our address is 30600 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills. Mansour Companies had approached me and said, John, we're looking to redevelop the site. Again, it's a former Big Boy. It's the southwest corner of 21 and Van Dyke. Clients have approached me and basically looking for the opportunity of doing the proposed multi-tenant retail center. Not a large shopping center. Again, it's 7,400 square foot. It sits on an existing 0.8 acres. Do we have photos? I know I sent you. Okay, we'll get that up.
The commission has everything you gave us, all the photos. Yeah.
So from what you see, again, I'm looking at an image of Google Earth. basically, the clients are wishing to both propose improve the site as well as the building itself. Again, it's a brand new structure. Improving the pavements of the asphalt, the kind of the flow of the actual design. So again, it's taking the existing building that's pretty much sits on the not a zero lot line on Van Dyke, but pushing it further back so there's parking in the front. There's better visibility for retail shops and for parking. That would make sense for them. So I did provide them with the rendering. I believe everyone has that. So again, we discussed to basically have a discussion tonight before we submit for site plan review, either next month or the following. This would like to be a spring construction next year for the summer tenants to kind of move in and do their own construction. We are looking to propose this as a drive-through, so rezoning would be necessary for the site as we recommended. So any other further questions, I'm here to answer. So.
Okay. Let me just start by saying I've occasionally had people gripe to me about things that need to be improved, and they say to me, I'm sure Mr. Fire gets this a ton, when are you going to do something about that big boy? So this would be a great improvement, an addition by subtraction, and it's a very attractive design. The one concern I would have is how you're going to screen a drive-through for the neighbor to the west of the property. And so that would need to be something that's well thought of. So, well, with that, I'm going to let Mr. Nguyen make his comments.
Thank you. The purpose of when we do these, when somebody comes to the counter, we generally do what we call kind of a preliminary site analysis, looking at the major items to see what issues we might have before they make a submission. And let's just jump to the first obvious one, which is the drive-through issue. If somebody wants to do a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, it requires C2 zoning. However, the C1, now there's a couple ways we could approach this, and I guess I want to ask Mr. Kirk to weigh in a little bit on this. The C1 district limits drive-throughs to lanes to banks. Now, this isn't a freestanding fast food restaurant. Just one tenant would have the drive-through. So the question would be, do we have to rezone this, or could we just have them go to the Board of Appeals and ask for a variance to allow the drive-through for another use? So that's one option, and we may have to consider that, or it would be rezoning. Either way, we're going to have a public hearing. The second issue is there's a 70-foot setback requirement from 21 Mile Road for the parking lot. Now, that's based on an assumption that 21 Mile Road would be widened to 5 lanes. Now, if the Road Commission doesn't need that, then we might be able to adjust it and not require that. Screening is the key issue. I've talked to these gentlemen about that already. There is a brick masonry wall that separates this site from the home to the west, but the wall is probably not high enough to give adequate relief to that neighbor. So some enhancement to that wall would be necessary to either raise the height or do something to it so they're not looking at that drive-through lane, or some additional planting. So those are the major issues. I mean, you could do this as a rezoning with a site plan attached to it. Either way, whether we call it C1 or C2, we want to find a way to make this work. And I guess, maybe Bob and I need to talk about a little more in terms of what the right option is. But either way, we'd have notification of the surrounding property owners. And I think, again, I agree with it. This is a great site plan, and we want to find a way to make this work. We would be remiss if we didn't find a way to get rid of that building and put a new one up that looks like this.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Lesonsky.
So we already have a drive-through business on northeast corner.
You do on the northeast corner, the Tim Hortons.
That's a C2?
That's a C2.
Okay. What would be the nature of this business different building than the use that's already there at Tim Hortons?
As you mentioned, that's a freestanding building.
Right.
This is the multi-tenant, and the client had approached me and said, John, if you guys have been driving around, you guys see a lot of new shopping centers being developed. A lot of times buildings are being split into 2 and creating 2 drive-throughs. The reason for that is drive-throughs are being pushed because of cost and purposes. So this proposed project can, from what my clients have told me, as well as what clients other tenants are attracting, is that this needs to be pushed because of the drive-through client or the drive-through tenant that's being proposed. And they're taking...
on drive-through facilities.
Drive-through facility.
On the southeast corner, we have a drive-through with the pharmacy, don't we?
Yes, that's Zone C2 as well.
Also C2.
Yeah. Now, we've made interpretations in the past, particularly for pharmacies, that the drive-through is accessory to the use and not, the typical sort of fast food Taco Bell, Burger King kind of facility. And I'd like to be consistent with what the intent of the zoning is. But again, it's a question of if it was one building and it was one tenant, there was no question in my mind it would require rezoning. This is one kind of more of a nuance. Does it matter if it's multi-tenant and one use has it? And I'm not doing this to avoid the public hearing. We're going to have a public hearing, just whether you have the public hearing or whether the Zoning Board of Appeals has the public hearing. So, Bob and I may need to spend some time thinking about that. But
sounds like there's a strong case for C2.
I think you could make a strong case for C2 here. I really do. I mean, you have a mixture of C1 and C2 up and down there. Regardless of whether it's C1 or C2, they've got to fix the screening. And if they have them come in together and do the site plan and the rezoning simultaneously, they don't lose any time. They're going to lose time going to the ZBA, so maybe it's just better to just do the straight thing. I just wanted to have this discussion with everybody so we knew what the options were. I don't want to have somebody come in and submit something and say, why didn't we do it this way?
I do have notes and have done studies on for the drive-through on what we can do to accomplish the noise control, things like that. The building, again, as I mentioned, is closer towards Van Dyke. So the parking spaces are grouped towards the residence itself. So we're actually only impacting the site itself by eliminating all the parking noise and people walking in and out.
And bring a building that much closer and echoing the sound that much closer.
Looking at Google Earth, yes. And our actually drive-through window on our design is actually abutting the commercial property rather than a residential. So our office have designed a handful of Tim Hortons throughout Michigan as well as Starbucks. So the SEC rating on actually the noise control has gotten better last 10 years, 15, 20 years. So the technology on the box itself, the Tim Hortons construction manager of Michigan, who I work with quite a bit, has proven to many cities that the actual car noise itself or the garbage man down the street makes louder noise than the actual box of the voice box of the drive-through window. So, and screening will be as well as improved moving forward. So, like I said, we're only improving the site by pushing all the congested parking spaces from the residential, near the residential, towards the Van Dyke.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner or for any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Casale.
I have a question for anybody. My memory is escaping me. Maybe it's directly to the south of this property. Is it the Tasty Freeze, the main floor covering? Which
Floor covering.
Floor covering.
The main floor. With the parking lot that abuts, I guess, right next to it. Well, they don't really have a parking lot. Okay, just trying to visualize.
Chairman, you have a lot of sites in that area that were developed and that are not consistent with current standards.
Yeah, before there was any planning.
Yeah. So what we try to do in these sites is when you get a new use or an updated user, to try to bring them into reasonable compliance with the standards as best you can. It's rare do you get this kind of opportunity, but again, the site's limited, and if we overly stringent, we might not get what we really want to get. So sometimes you have to. What's the best option here? So far, I like what I see. And I think there's a design solution to the issues that were brought up tonight. I really do, especially with you get a creative architect like this.
Yeah, I don't doubt you. I don't doubt that. So, okay, thank you. We look forward to seeing more from you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wynn, did you have anything else in the planning director's report?
No. Thank
you. So now that you have a competent assistant with you, we expect at least to get a little more reports from you?
Yes.
Very good. And with that, I'll entertain one more motion.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.